Hi everyone, it's your Twin Cities housing market insight for July and June of 2020. Well, the median home price in the Twin Cities actually fell 3% in May from the COVID-19 related pause in April that primarily impacted upper bracket home prices, but then bounced back to tie the record high of $305,000 in June as the bustling spring market picked up where it had originally left off. Based on the recent uptick in activity, we believe that the seasonally strong spring market has essentially been extended by approximately 2 months due to the COVID-19 crisis, and we believe that a new record for median home prices will be set in both July and potentially in August for closed sales. We're expecting the summer slowdown that typically starts in June for pending home sales to arrive sometime in August. I'll start my analysis out with mortgage forbearance in the U.S. As of July 5th, 8.18% of all mortgages in the U.S. remain in a state of forbearance. The prevailing economic view on this is still that the current state of forbearance is temporary and will most likely entirely resolve itself once the virus crisis ends. However, it is worth noting that many of these economists expected to see forbearance numbers improving significantly by now, and they really haven't yet. Also, nobody really knows when this COVID-19 crisis is going to end. There is a minority group of economists that believe that this forbearance situation is part of a late-term debt cycle, part of a broader macroeconomic situation, and that the forbearance issue will ultimately turn into a delinquency issue, which could ultimately lead us into the first bear market for housing in the U.S. in well over a decade. Either way, mortgage delinquency is something that we'll be keeping an eye on in the coming months. Mortgage rates. Mortgage rates in the U.S. continue to fall in May, June, and into July, and currently sit at a new record low of 2.98% for the average 30-year fixed mortgage in the U.S. Certainly there are people locking in 30-year fixed mortgages at lower rates than that, but that is the lowest average 30-year fixed rate on record. Homebuilder Confidence. The NAHB Housing Market Index in the U.S. climbed 14 points from the previous month to 72 in July, easily beating market expectations of 60 and returning to pre-pandemic level as sentiment rebounded following the easing of coronavirus-related restrictions. With a new wave of coronavirus lockdown proposals on deck and with underlying issues with forbearance and delinquency, there are, confidence could have catalysts for decline down the road. But for now, builders are back to feeling good. Closed sales moved up marginally in May from the COVID-19 related pause in April, but then moved up 33% in June with 6,193 residential closings. That was also down 2% year over year. The median home price in the Twin Cities fell 3% in May, like I said earlier, based on the COVID-19 pause in April, but then bounced back up 3% to tie the record high of $305,000. New listings. New listings started to recover in May and in June, but the pace of new listings remains well below year-over-year numbers. 7,499 new listings hit the market in June, which is still down 21% year-over-year. Homes for sale. So far, the primary impact that COVID-19 has had on the Twin Cities market has been the inhibition of new listings, which has resulted in the lowest inventory level ever for the month of June. At the end of June, we had only 9,615 units of inventory in the Twin Cities housing market, which was down 8% month over month and down a whopping 26% year over year. Pending sales, 6,874 homes, condos, and townhomes came under contract in June. That is the highest level of pending sales in June since 2004. That's up 17% month over month and up 7% year over year. That concludes my analysis for the month of July and the month of June. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any further questions. Thanks.